see you again.
We missed you. We missed you a lot. Here's some of our friends.
Modi-Trump dosti and diplomacy. Redefining India-US partnership. Trump announces reciprocal tariffs.
Partnership will also strengthen our economic ties and bring greater fairness and reciprocity to our trading relationship. As a signal of good faith, Prime Minister Modi recently announced the reductions to India's unfair, very strong tariffs that limit U.S. access into the Indian market very strongly, and really it's a big problem, I must say.
Immigration, military and trade in focus. Ending Ukraine war, a common goal.
राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप जो प्रयास कर रहे हैं, मैं उनका स्वागत करता हूं, समर्थन करता हूं और मैं चाहता हूं कि राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप हो सके उतना जल्दी सफल हो ताकि दुनिया में शांति के रास्ते खुले.
Decoding Prime Minister Modi's US visit. Top focus on 5 Live.
Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast. I am Gaurav Sawant. We're talking about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the White House, his interaction with the US President Donald Trump. And remember, he's only the 4th world leader to be meeting the US President after the inauguration of Trump 2.0 within the first month of that inauguration. So, what's the symbolism here? What are the substantive takeaways for India and for the United States of America? Because when leaders of the world's 2 most powerful and vibrant democracies meet, it's not just about India and the United States of America. What's the wider impact? Because we'll talk about trade, we'll talk about tariffs, we'll talk about technology, we'll talk about defense, and we'll talk about connectivity. Because connectivity is huge when the two talk about the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. So that's a corridor that will connect India all the way to the United States of America through the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Europe, and then America. What does that mean for China's Belt and Road Initiative? What does the handing over or the clearance of handing over of that Pakistani Canadian terrorist Captain Tahawwur Rana of the Pakistan Army and his involvement with the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks indicate? There are many, many layers to the India-US relationship. We'll talk about military hardware, but first we bring you this report.
Even as Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed in Washington, D.C. for his 2-day trip to the United States, US President Donald Trump was coming through on the threats he issued a week ago. After slapping duties on imports from his 3 biggest trading partners, China, Canada and Mexico, after imposing duties on steel and aluminium imports, Trump dragged India into his crosshairs by imposing tit-for-tat tariffs across the board.
The reciprocal makes tariffs really fair. It's a beautiful, simple system, and we don't have to worry about, gee, we're charging too much or too little. But traditionally, India is right at the top of the pack, pretty much. There are a couple of smaller countries that are actually more, but India is a they charge tremendous tariffs.
Trump, the eternal deal maker, kept up the pressure on India, raising the issue again twice in the presence of Prime Minister Modi. First, during their bilateral talks, and again at the joint press conference.
We announced some very big elements today of success. I call it an element of success, reciprocal tariffs, so that somebody charges us, we charge them the same amount, which has never been done in our country before. We've always been taken advantage of by other countries, and we allowed that to happen foolishly, but we're not going to allow that any longer. It's hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation. We are going to, if it's India or if it's somebody else with low tariffs, we're going to have the same. We're going to have whatever India charges, we're charging them. Whatever another country charges, we're charging them. So it's called reciprocal.
The impact on the Indian stock markets was as expected. Though the indices opened in green, they were later dragged down by the possible repercussions of the trade war on Indian industry and the resulting uncertainty among foreign portfolio investors. The Nifty is down nearly 900 points in the past 8 sessions.
Not only Indian, but world over, the investors are nervous. They are not sure which way the global economy will move with these kind of new tariff and what kind of disruption it can bring to these overall global supply chains.
The reciprocal tariff, however, failed to cast a shadow on the Modi-Trump meetings, with both leaders taking off again on the ties they enjoyed more than 4 years ago. India already has an import duty cut in the offing and is likely to trim its trade surplus with the US with more crude oil, gas and defense imports. Prime Minister Modi also alleviated some of the trade tensions in his trademark style.
अमेरिका की भाषा में कहूं तो विकसित भारत का मतलब मेक इंडिया ग्रेट अगेन, यानी मीगा। जब अमेरिका और भारत साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं, यानी मागा। मागा प्लस मीगा तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी।
Meanwhile, US and Indian officials are also moving forward with talks on a bilateral trade deal, with a Trump administration official saying they hope to have a deal in place this year. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
And on this India Today special broadcast, let's decode the optics, the symbolism and the substantive part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the White House. And who better than Ambassador Taranjeet Singh Sandhu joining us on this broadcast. He was India's ambassador to the United States from 2020 to 2024 and has served in the United States both when Donald Trump was in the White House and when Joe Biden was in the White House. In fact, when Donald Trump came to India for Namaste Trump, Ambassador Sandhu had played a key role in that, and we'll talk about this during the broadcast. Ambassador Sandhu, as always, welcome on India Today. I want to understand from you, sir. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke of Donald Trump's mission of MAGA, or Make America Great Again, his mission of Make India Great Again. So MAGA plus MEGA, he said that becomes into a mega partnership. What are the key takeaways for you from this mega partnership meeting within 1 month of Trump's inauguration?
So I think the timing is very significant. It's very important that they met very early, and that has been reflected in an early visit, as you have indicated, in the first 3 weeks. The visit, and you have seen all of that, we have already played it out. I'm sure your people have also watched it. And if you include the joint statement with it, I think this clearly lays out that this was indeed a productive and a substantive visit. And I am saying it on the basis of what has come out. I was already mentioning it to you earlier, that there are clear 6 areas which they are talking about transformative changes. So, peace is there, investment and trade is there, energy is there, technology and innovation are there, multilateral cooperation is there, and of course, people-to-people issues. So, with these, there's also clear date lines. In each of these subgroups, if you go, there are specific areas which are to be covered, and the committees have a dateline put with them. And that's why this is certainly a step forward. And the very fact that they have got together and people have got the directions, that is both the administrations and the government, that they have to move forward. The leadership has shown the green flag. This is not to say that there will not be any challenges. Of course there will be.
Okay.
That's what the negotiations is about.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about the challenges, let's talk about the opportunities, and let's talk about the optics for a moment. So the moment Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed, his first interaction was with Tulsi Gabbard, just approved as Director National Intelligence, his interaction with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, his interaction with Doge Chief Elon Musk, and the way Trump introduced him to his entire team. What did you make of that? What message comes out from there, sir?
I think the symbolism was very clear. He stayed in the Blair House, and I think you know the historical as well as the presence in Blair House. It's the guest house within the premises of White House. And the fact that Tulsi Gabbard met him, of course, Prime Minister and Tulsi Gabbard know each other very well. We have known Tulsi Gabbard for a long time. She was the co-chair of India Caucus. In fact, I had the privilege of attending her marriage in Hawaii. So a very, very smart choice, and she's a serving colonel. So yes, there's an element of defense there too. So also the other people. And I think the interaction with much known Elon Musk with his children showed the personal side too. So I think, and you had the NSA there, and you had the other columns. But more importantly, even in the delegation, you saw the lineup there. So both the sides were able to have frank and candid conversations, which is largely due to the good rapport both the Prime Minister and the President have. So last evening, you remember, at that time, everybody was saying that, this talks are going to fall through and there is going to be some big blast there. But that didn't help. That didn't happen. And that didn't happen because this relationship has already moved into the partnership stage. And please remember this tariff, which is again and again mentioned. Tariffs have also been put on a number of important allies of United States. And as I had yesterday pointed to you, that it's basically the imbalance, and India doesn't feature that high. But nevertheless, if you look at the joint statement, there's a clear roadmap laid out there.
Okay, and that's the point I wanted to come to. There are some commentators who say the timing of Trump's announcement of reciprocal tariffs, just hours before his meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House, was that intended to send a signal? Was that, to ensure that he's not swayed by India's, as many argue, the charm offensive of Prime Minister Narendra Modi? Or that's par for the course, India had factored that in, some aspects already taken care of in the budget, others you have to negotiate?
So, look, this was quite clear that he's going to make the announcement. I do not think it's linked with the visit because a number of visits were taking place. And this visit could have taken place 3 days earlier or 2 days later too. So it's not planning was done more with the protocol that, with the very limited time, quickly, one after another, the top leaders, the top 4 leaders had come. So I would not link it with that. I think it was well known. But look at what has come out in the joint statement. Look at trade and investment. It's one of the important areas. In fact, Prime Minister Modi earlier had tweeted that trade will be one of the important discussions. And I think if we look at it, the new goal of Mission 500, which is double the total bilateral trade to $500 billion. That is there. Then we also have the negotiations of bilateral trade agreement by fall of 2025. Now, what does that mean? That means forward movement. You also have a pledge by both sides to address what are bilateral trade barriers, market access, and also supply chain. And remember, who had brought in the term supply chain first in importance was in Trump 1.0 during the time COVID was there. And the implication was obviously secure supply chains. So all these aspects have been brought in, but also remember the joint statement mentions about Indian investments in United States, almost of 8 billion, and creating high quality jobs.
You know, the aspect I want to raise now, as we talk about energy, you know, India is already buying gas, LNG from the United States of America. Donald Trump's dream of drill, baby, drill, drill more oil, export more oil. Overall, how does that pan out? And especially when the conversation now is also on the small modular reactors and India's, you know, looking at nuclear energy, whether from France or from the United States of America, sir.
So, Gaurav, let us realistically look at our problem. We require huge energy requirements. And that has to be met by a basket of areas. Now, we also, what is the term? It's energy security, meaning you are not dependent on just one. And a lot can happen there. So, I think it is in India's interest to diversify energy imports. And United States has emerged as an important energy producer. And it's also trying to become an energy exporter. So this is merely reflecting that, you know, the US-India energy security partnership. This is furthering that. Basically, we would like to get more LNG, more oil, and US is willing to give it to us. And if that helps to balance the trade, why not? I mean, we are not in any loss. The second part which you mentioned is the nuclear energy. You know that SMEs are becoming in vogue now, meaning small nuclear modular reactors. Now, US is an important producer, and India, that could be an important solution, because having big nuclear reactors, these are also alternatives. So that's another area which has been brought in focus. So I think the energy partnership was destined to go deeper. And if that amount increases and it can balance between both two sides, I don't see any loss for us.
Okay. So, which could well be win-win, hopefully. Another aspect I want to focus on is the IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, and the I2U2, India, Israel, United Arab Emirates, and the United States of America. This cooperation, do you see IMEC, you know, which was talked about during India's G20 presidency, could this be a game changer and a response or an answer to China's Belt and Road Initiative? Is that what we are looking at? Are we also looking at a time frame for IMEC and I2U2 taking that forward?
So being an alternative or not, I'll leave it to the experts and analysts to come, but it's very important, no doubt. Look, both United States and India give a lot of importance to the Middle East, and particularly we are here talking about Saudi Arabia and UAE. You know that our commercial strategic relationship with them are very important. And so is for United States. If you look at Trump 1.0, when Abraham's Accords were signed, you saw that both UAE and Saudi Arabia were important players in that. And the Prime Minister had a very good personal rapport with the leaders of both those countries. Now, in addition, economically, that can benefit India big time, because India can be an important supplier. I know, because coming from Amritsar, I know that Amritsar can benefit a lot through, if we can get markets in UAE or in Saudi Arabia for both our fruits, vegetables, our handicrafts. Similarly,
so stay with me for a moment, sir. Let's just play out what Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President, what was their conversation like on IMEC and I2U2?
भारत और अमेरिका की साझेदारी लोकतंत्र और लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों तथा व्यवस्थाओं को सशक्त बनाती है। इंडो पैसिफिक में शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि को बढ़ाने के लिए हम मिलकर काम करेंगे। इसमें क्वाड की विशेष भूमिका होगी। इस वक्त भारत में होने जा रही क्वाड समिट में हम पार्टनर देशों के साथ नए क्षेत्रों में सहयोग बढ़ाएंगे। आईमेक और I2U2 के तहत हम इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर और कनेक्टिविटी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर मिलकर काम करेंगे।
And Professor Andrew Latham, Professor of International Relations and Political Theory at the Macalester College in the United States of America, now joins me on the broadcast. Professor Latham, you've seen the joint statement, you've seen the body language, the interaction between the Indian Prime Minister and the American President. What, according to you, is the biggest takeaway for the United States from this conversation, sir?
For the United States, securing enhanced access to the Indian market, which is massive. The tariff barriers are not actually that important. They're not that severe. There are some non-tariff barriers, but both the Prime Minister and the President have committed to working out a mutually beneficial trade agreement. So on the one hand, there's some economic benefits. On the other hand, there's some geopolitical benefits as well. Securing not an alliance, but an enhanced partnership, which involves not just things like the Quad, but sharing defense technologies and weapon systems and things like that, and just being on the same page in the Indo-Pacific, recognizing that there will be frictions. They're not always going to agree. These two great powers are not always going to agree. But I see coming out of this summit, if I can call it that, real enhancements in both the economic and the geopolitical relationships. There's a third dimension which I think needs to be foregrounded here, which is that the Indian diaspora in the United States is the most, it's the wealthiest demographic in the entire country, wealthier even than the descendants of the Mayflower people. And it is increasingly influential politically, and both parties are vying for the support of the Indian diaspora community in the U.S. There's no way Donald Trump is going to jeopardize that. So he has both domestic political, domestic economic, and foreign policy incentives to do a good deal with Prime Minister Modi. And then the final thing I'll say on this particular segment is that these two guys are cut from the same cloth, right-wing or center-right, populists, larger than life, and they have a very good working relationship, merging into a friendship, actually. So for all these reasons,
at, India and America, Professor, are on the same page when it comes to sending back illegal immigrants. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi made one thing very clear: there needs to be an effective crackdown on the ecosystem that encourages the illegal immigrants. However, a major issue in India is the fact that they're sent back either on board a military aircraft or in chains and in shackles. Is that a concern that India has been able to tell America to address that concern? And will America take India's concerns into consideration?
Yes, it's one of the points of friction. Look, there are two kinds of people that get repatriated. People who are not violent criminals get sent back on civilian aircraft, which is cost effective, it's very cheap. But there have been some incidents where violent criminals have attacked air crews. So if it's a violent criminal that's being repatriated, yes, they are shackled and handcuffed and all the rest of it for the security of the other passengers, but also for the air crew. I don't know the details of this particular flight, other than I know it generated incredible rancor in India and is a point of real friction. And I'm hoping that on the U.S. side that they can both sort the issue out, but also market it a little more effectively.
There was an issue because something that India has been discussing very extensively within the delay in supply of GE 404 engines for India's light combat aircraft. So while the US president talks about eventually, talking about potential sales of F-35 stealth fighters to India, currently, India's requirements are GE 404 engines. There were some commentators who were apprehensive that America was using those engines as a leverage. Would you buy that, the delay in supplies, or is it due to supply chain issues? Would that be expedited, that India requires perhaps as on yesterday?
Yeah, I think it's supply chain issues. I think it's an issue between GE and Hindustan Aeronautics, and they just haven't been able to sort that out. Look, don't get me wrong. President Trump, like Prime Minister Modi, they're more than happy to use whatever political leverage they have to get what they want out of other countries. There's no denying that. But what I'm suggesting here is that that these two countries, all the stars are aligning just right: geopolitical, economic, domestic politics in the U.S., and that's inclining both parties to find ways to overcome these hurdles and reduce these points of friction, recognizing that in the real world, there always are going to be points of friction between Canada and the U.S., the two closest countries culturally, politically, economically in the world. Right now, there's huge friction. But if you're asking me if I'm optimistic about the Indo-American relationship, I very much am.
One aspect that I want to quickly play out, for the benefit of our viewers, because that's again an issue between the Biden administration and India, the situation in Bangladesh, the alleged role of the American deep state, the Khalistani elements in the United States, an Indian consulate was set on fire, and Biden administration was in the eye of a storm for not taking action against the perpetrators. Listen into the conversation on the Khalistani elements and the road ahead.
Okay, Geeta Mohan from India Today, sir. The question is about the fact that you've decided to extradite Tahawwur Rana. Thank you so much. India has been waiting to have him back in India to bring him to justice. But there are many other elements in the United States of America, particularly Khalistani separatists who've been working against Indian interests. How is the United States of America going to cooperate on that front with India? There have been allegations that have been leveled against Indian agencies by the Biden administration. Are you going to relook that with Tulsi Gabbard as DNI now?
Well, I don't think India had a very good relationship with the Biden administration. They wouldn't sell them oil and gas, which is rather hard to believe because, it's a good thing to do. And a lot of things happened that weren't very appropriate, I thought, between India and the administration, the Biden administration. But as you said, we're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately. And there are more to follow because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime. And we want to make it good for India, and it's very important. So that kind of a relationship is very important to us.
And Mr. President, what you would like to say about the Bangladesh issue, because we saw and it is evident that how the deep state of United States was involved to regime change during the Biden administration. Then Muhammad Yunus made Junior Soros also. So what is your point of view about the Bangladesh?
What is the role that the deep state played in the situation in Bangladesh?
Well, there was no role for our deep state. It was. This is something that the Prime Minister has been working on for a long time and has been worked on for hundreds of years, frankly. I've been reading about it. But I will leave Bangladesh to the Prime Minister.
Professor Latham, help us decode what President Trump meant, on action against Khalistanis, and when he said, the Modi government didn't have a very good equation with the Biden administration. The Prime Minister was completely quiet on it and on Bangladesh.
I think in both cases it was trying to signal a reset and trying to privilege the relationship with the government of India over, when I talked about the Indian diaspora, of course, it involves Khalistanis and separatists, as it does in Canada as well. But privileging the official economic, political relationship between Washington and Delhi. That's the signal that I got loud and clear. And the willingness to extradite this particular figure, I think, is a tangible expression of that. And it's a signal of good faith, as it were, not to the Khalistani population, but to the government of India.
Okay, we'll track that story very closely. Professor Latham, for joining me here on India Today. As always, many thanks. One of the key takeaways of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States of America and his interaction with the US President Donald Trump was the extradition of Captain Tahawwur Rana of the Pakistan Army, a fugitive in Canada, living in the United States of America and a key plotter of the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, along with David Coleman Headley, the Pakistan-born American terrorist. These are sleeper cells of Pakistani terrorist organization Lashkar-e-Taiba in Canada and the United States of America. Both these terrorists were actively involved in a terror plot even in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in Europe. Tahawwur Rana will finally be extradited to India to stand trial for his role in the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. And he had a direct role. He was involved in carrying out reconnaissance missions, not just in Mumbai and not just in one location in Mumbai, but multiple locations. But look at their evil minds. He wanted to target a colony of Indian Navy veterans in Mumbai, those who were involved in the bombing of Karachi in 1971. He was involved in the targeting of the NDC, the National Defense College in Delhi. They carried out reconnaissance missions in Delhi, in Mumbai and in Pune. What was their plan? Instead of terrorists trying to kill one brigadier at the line of control, any brigade commander, they wanted to target many brigadiers or equivalents in the heart of the national capital. That is how evil these terror plotters are. But his interrogation may just give more information on the involvement of Pakistan Army and ISI officers in the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. We bring you more in this report.
"16 years after the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, a big declaration by US President Donald Trump.
Having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India.
The US has confirmed extradition of 2008 Mumbai terror attack plotter Tahawwur Rana to India. The announcement came during a joint press conference with Prime Minister Narendra Modi following the bilateral talks at the White House on Thursday.
The United States and India will be working together like never before to confront the threat of radical Islamic terrorism, a threat all over the world, actually. Today I'm pleased to announce that my administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India. So,
Prime Minister Modi thanked President Trump for his administration's approval of Tahawwur Rana's extradition.
आतंकवाद के खिलाफ लड़ाई में भारत और अमेरिका दृढ़ता से साथ खड़े रहे और मैं राष्ट्रपति जी का आभारी हूं कि उन्होंने 2008 के जिसने भारत में नरसंहार किया था उस मुजरिम को अब भारत के हवाले करने का निर्णय किया है.
Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri confirmed that the government is working on the logistics of Rana's surrender and extradition from the US.
President Trump on extradition said that Tahawwur Rana will be extradited, but there are more to follow because there are many requests from India. Could you just tell us what are the requests from India? Are there any more names that you've given to the Americans?
Yes, there are other requests as well. I won't go into the names immediately, but there are other requests that are registered with the US authorities.
With the US nod for extradition, sources in government say that legal documents and warrants have been shared with American authorities. A team of NIA officials is likely to visit the US. Rana could be brought to India in a few weeks. The NIA will seek his custody to grill him for more information on his role in the 26/11 deadly attacks. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis welcomed Trump's decision.
जो 26/11 के मुंबई के हमलों का एक प्रकार से प्लानिंग का मास्टरमाइंड रहा है, उसके एक्स्ट्राडिशन को अमेरिका ने मान्यता दी है. मैं इसके लिए देश के प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूं.
Rana is accused of providing the blueprint that helped Lashkar-e-Taiba carry out the Mumbai attacks. He has been charged with criminal conspiracy and waging or attempting to wage war against the government of India. With Geeta Mohan in Washington, D.C., Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now on this India Today special broadcast is Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, someone who keeps a hawk eye on developments in Pakistan. Sushant Sareen, I want to quote to you what President Donald Trump said. He said, India and the United States of America will work like never before to combat radical Islamic terror. What does the extradition of this Pakistani army captain Tahawwur Rana to India almost a decade and a half plus later after 26/11 actually means, Sushant Sareen?
Gaurav, it means a lot. It means a lot, not just in the context of, bringing justice to the victims of 26/11, because this guy was one of the linchpins of the plotters or, the people who plotted that attack. He was one of the main characters. In terms of providing logistical support, travel, all kinds of other stuff which he had done, including financing some of these projects. He was somebody who was very well connected with some of the more shady characters, the Major Iqbals and Sajid Mir, who was declared dead by the Pakistanis. And then finally, when there was too much pressure put on them, they dug him out of his grave and they've convicted him now. Probably he's living in some five-star hotel somewhere. Those kind of very, very shady characters were all people that Rana was interacting with. Now, his extradition is important because, look, his conviction in the US, the Americans did not probably go into the kind of microscopic detail of whatever he knew, because they were interested in getting a conviction. They got a conviction. In India's case, there is both an intelligence angle as well as a criminal justice angle to getting this guy over. And that intelligence angle, which means that, there will be a lot of stuff that the security agencies will want to ferret out of him. Of course, some of it will be dated, but it will still fill in some of the important blanks in how these organizations work. What are the various kind of linkages, how those linkages work inside Pakistan.
Very interesting. You talk about, and I want to bring in Arzu Kazmi from Pakistan in just a moment, because Arzu Kazmi, clearly it's not achhe din for Pakistan when the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of India on the same page to battle radical Islamic terror, and Tahawwur Rana is extradited to India. तो ISI का गेम ओवर?
अब ये तो कहना मुश्किल है कि ISI का गेम ओवर, बट गौरव, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल फॉरेन ऑफिस ने इस स्टेटमेंट को रिजेक्ट कर दिया है. पाकिस्तान की फॉरेन ऑफिस सेड कि ये एक मिसलीडिंग स्टेटमेंट है और इसमें पाकिस्तान को जो है बिल्कुल भी शामिल नहीं किया गया है. तो आई थिंक अभी पाकिस्तान इस चीज को एक्सेप्ट करने के लिए तैयार नहीं है. एंड सेकंड थिंग इज दैट कि पाकिस्तान देख रहा है कि इंडिया जो है इज गोइंग हाई बिकॉज ऑफ इट्स इकोनॉमी एंड फॉरेन पॉलिसी. सो ऑब्वियसली डोनाल्ड ट्रंप के साथ रिलेशंस आपके अच्छे हैं, सो यू विल ट्राई टू क्रिएट सम प्रॉब्लम फॉर पाकिस्तान. दिस इज व्हाट पीपल आर टॉकिंग अबाउट एंड दिस इज व्हाट पीपल आर थिंकिंग हियर इन पाकिस्तान. सो आई डोंट थिंक इसको बहुत
ISI के ऑफिसर्स का नाम निकलेगा. पाकिस्तान आर्मी में कौन कौन थे जो 26/11 में इन्वॉल्व थे. बट व्हाट इज वर्स, सुशांत सरीन, नाउ पाकिस्तान, the threat that Pakistan poses to the entire civilized world. Tahawwur Rana was a Lashkar-e-Taiba sleeper cell in Canada. David Coleman Headley was a Lashkar-e-Taiba sleeper cell in the United States of America. And we don't know how many sleeper cells does Lashkar-e-Taiba have like this in Canada, in England, in France, across Europe.
Yeah, so there will be a lot of information that will be ferreted out of this guy. On all those various, proxies who operate, who are basically citizens of the UK, Australia, US, Canada, a number of other countries, Germany, for example. And we know it for a fact that Pakistani intelligence agency officers posted in their missions in some of these countries use these kinds of dubious characters to actually make an outreach into the diaspora and then use members of the diaspora, either threaten them, intimidate them, or bribe them in some cases. For example, there was one person who was caught in the UK wanting to go and murder a blogger in Netherlands. Very clearly had been paid by the ISI, but the British covered it all up because of their relations with the Pakistanis. British cover up all these kinds of actions anyways. So they didn't expose the ISI, but there is no such compunctions on India's part to not expose, these ISI handlers or the ISI agents in many of these countries. So that will be a very important piece of information. And then, of course, Gaurav, when you get hold of a guy like this and he starts singing like a canary, there is a certain amount of value in terms of the propaganda, in terms of highlighting to the rest of the world the kind of terrorist games that the Pakistanis play. So I think, yes, and I see no reason why India needs to be restrained on this count, especially because
absolutely not. India must expose
Pakistanis ramping up terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. So why will we
not
use
this? Very significant point you raise. Very significant. But let me get Arzu to respond. Arzu, पाकिस्तान इंडिया के केस में तो बोल सकता है कि ठीक है, हमको नहीं मालूम, हमको नहीं बताया गया, इंडिया बहुत पावरफुल है, इसीलिए डोनाल्ड ट्रंप के साथ मिलकर वो हमें फंसा रहे. लेकिन जब आईएसआई के स्लीपर सेल्स इंग्लैंड में निकलेंगे, जैसे जिन्होंने 7/7 लंदन बॉम्बिंग की थी, वो भी सब पाकिस्तानी ओरिजिन के थे, या फिर वो एयर मार्शल का बेटा, एयर वाइस मार्शल का बेटा जिसने न्यूयॉर्क में बॉम्बिंग करने की कोशिश की थी, प्लेन में बैठ गया था, तब गिरफ्तार हुआ था. इस तरह के जब स्लीपर सेल निकलेंगे कि पाकिस्तानी दुनिया के किसी कोने में होते हैं, वो टेरर फैलाते हैं, जब ये निकलेगा तो बेसिकली आईएसआई की शामत आएगी कि नहीं आएगी, या पाकिस्तान वो आईएसआई फिर ब्रेजन आउट कर जाएगा?
नहीं, देखें, ये एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है पाकिस्तान के लिए. ऑब्वियसली ये बहुत बड़ा एक एलिगेशन लगा है और इसके ऊपर हम लोग यहाँ पे जितने भी जर्नलिस्ट और एक्टिविस्ट हैं, वी आर जस्ट वेटिंग फॉर द आईएसपीआर और एजेंसीज की तरफ से कोई स्टेटमेंट आए तो हमें पता लगे कि ये क्या सोच रहे हैं. लेकिन ये एक चीज हुई है और इस पे अगर इंडिया बोलता तो जाहिर है हम मना कर देते, लेकिन अमेरिका को ना करना बहुत मुश्किल है पाकिस्तान के लिए. सो इट्स अ बिग चैलेंज फॉर पाकिस्तान नाउ. और इस किस्म के लोग जहां से भी पकड़े जाएं, नो मैटर कि वो किस एजेंसी से हैं या वो कहां से हैं, उनको प्रॉपर सजा मिलनी चाहिए. ये तो मैं बिल्कुल कहती हूँ कि अगर वो पाकिस्तान की एजेंसी से हो, पाकिस्तान की पॉलिटिशियंस हो, या कोई भी हो, या दुनिया में कहीं से भी वो बिलोंग करते हो, अगर कोई इस किस्म की हरकत करेगा, टेररिज्म करेगा, तो उसको बिल्कुल सजा होनी चाहिए. और मेरे ख्याल है हम लोग थोड़ा सा इंतजार कर लें कि हमारे जो एजेंसीज हैं या आईएसपीआर की तरफ से या फॉरेन ऑफिस की तरफ से कोई स्टेटमेंट आए इस बारे में.
Sushant Sareen, in the past, Pakistan has brazened it out. Even when Pakistan's Federal Investigation Agency carried out an investigation into the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks and found that the 10 terrorists had been trained in Thatta, Sindh. They were trained by Pakistan Army elements. They were trained by Pakistan Navy, and the boat came from Pakistan. There was so much evidence that Pakistan gathered. They didn't go after state actors. So Major Iqbal, Sajid Mir and several others, what about Hafiz Saeed? They've still taken no action against him for 26/11. So can India expect action, or will Namaloom Afraad continue to do what Namaloom Afraad have been doing?
Gaurav, let's be realistic. I don't think the Pakistanis are going to take any action. I think the way that state is structured and the way that state is crafted, I think this kind of activity, this kind of nefarious activity is part of the state's culture. So I don't expect, any kind of contrition from Pakistanis or any kind of an effort to reform themselves. I don't see that happen, number one. Number two, what is likely to happen is the brazenness, the blank denials that they had nothing to do with it. There's typical charges that, oh, this is commerce which is talking. Like, there's guys say, oh, this is, what do you say, deep pockets, as their former foreign minister used to use as a slur against Jewish people, deep pockets talking. So those are the kind of slurs they're going to use to try and explain this away, to try and divert it. That's going to be the second line of attack. The third line of attack from the Pakistanis is going to be that, it is actually India's which is doing everything, because like one of this clownish high commissioners to India, Abdul Basit, he still says 26/11 was a false flag attack. There's some of their journalists, very highly regarded journalists, call it a false flag attack. So you will have those kind of characters coming out of the woodwork to spread their kind of propaganda. And that is the way this is going to play out. But I think we need to be relentless in exposing the shenanigans of the Pakistani state, of their agencies, and of their people, who come and pretend as though they want very good relations with India, but behind our backs, behind everybody's backs, they're basically conspiring against India. So I have no faith on Pakistan coming clean on this.
Because Arzu, people like Tahawwur Rana and David Coleman Headley, they were involved in 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks in India, but they were also convicted of trying to spread terror in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in Europe. That is where Pakistan's real nightmare will start, when details of Pakistani sleeper cells in Canada, in Europe and United States, when they come out in public domain, because this time it will come out with evidence. And God, for you, God forbid, Pakistan may be back on the FATF grey list.
Exactly. I 100% agree. First of all, I want to say that I 100% agree with Sushant Sareen sir. What he said, that Pakistan will never accept this thing. और हम यहाँ से इनकार ही करेंगे, और हमारा यही कहना होगा कि नहीं, हमारे पर एलिगेशन है because of India. Because India is involved when Prime Minister Modi is in America, and of course he's talking with, or he's discussing Pakistan with Donald Trump. So पाकिस्तान के लिए कहना बहुत आसान होगा, लेकिन अब चीज़ें थोड़ी सी हमें मुश्किल नज़र आ रही हैं, इसमें से निकलते हुए हम मुश्किल दिखाई दे रहे हैं, और FATF में दोबारा जाते हुए भी दिखाई दे रहे हैं, अगर हमने फौरन इसके ऊपर कोई पॉजिटिव तरीके से एक्शन ना लिया. क्योंकि अगर इस किस्म के लोगों को सपोर्ट करेंगे तो ऑब्वियसली दुनिया बात करेगी, और अब तो आपको पता है कि सोशल मीडिया का ज़माना है, वो तो है नहीं कि 71 में क्या हुआ और उसके बाद हमने कोई और कहानी सुना दी, वो तो अब चलेगा नहीं. तो डेफिनेटली पाकिस्तान को अगर इस प्रॉब्लम से निकलना है तो अपनी गलती तो एक्सेप्ट करनी होगी
और दोषियों के खिलाफ कार्रवाई करनी होगी. Will Pakistan do that? Take action against Hafiz Saeed, Masood Azhar, and all these Maulanas of terror in Pakistan who've been flourishing under the Pakistan army. Sushant Sareen and Arzu Kazmi for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. We'll be tracking this story very, very closely. India will be relentless, and this time Donald Trump has said India and the United States will be relentless in their war on radical Islamic terror. That is all I have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.